Ah, run! Okay. We're live. Hi, video watchers. Okay. Am I recording this? Well, look at that. I sure am. Here we go.
At the end of the day, making free content doesn't come cheap. Show your support for the independent content you're listening to right now at patreon.com/acedetect. That's patreon.com/ACEDTECT.
This is the Daily Tech News for Monday, January 12th, 2015. I'm Tom Merritt. He's Justin Robert Young. Justin, it's our first post-CES show.
And I'm still all hot about TVs. Apparently, that's not just a CES thing. You know, I'm curving everything. I'm watching 4K versions of GIFs that were made in 1988. He's the best
covered
thing.
His face in quantum dots. It's amazing. All right, well, we do have some news, though. It's a very policy-oriented day because I think all the tech companies have pretty much exhausted the majority of their press releases, with the exception of Samsung, who introduced a product today. But we do have some warnings from the Future of Life Institute that we will get to later in the show.
Very harsh when they're warning you.
Yeah. No, because they're about artificial intelligence and how not to let it kill us all. We'll get to that in a minute. Let's start off with the headlines. The Next Web reports the United States Central Command Twitter and YouTube accounts were accessed and messages were posted to them by a group calling itself the Cyber Caliphate and claiming an affiliation with ISIS, presumably referring to Daesh. Links were posted to zip files which contained some public documents as well as others of unverified origin.
Gotta wonder whether or not CENTCOM ever comes back with the Twitter and YouTube. Seems like fairly unnecessary appendages for a very important element of our military.
Both accounts have been suspended, presumably on the request of CENTCOM, I would guess. I think they do come back. I think they come back with a much better idea of two-factor authentication.
Well, sure. And
all
they
their
do, they
social accounts.
But at the same time, why? I guess that's my question. Like, does everything need a social media account?
Yes, I was involved in some talks with a guy in the National Guard in the 90s, right when they were beginning to say, we need to be ahead of the information wars. We need to be talking about the importance of communicating on the internet. This is before all the social networks. I think there's still a lot of people who believe, like, yeah, it is important for us to be in all of these places. And in fact, in light of the Charlie Hebdo attacks, a lot of people are discussing how do we combat the propaganda. We've got a story about that later on in the headlines.
It's interesting. Although there are elements that are supposed to be forward-facing of our government. I don't know if CENTCOM is necessarily one of them. The Verge reports that Samsung has added the 5.5-inch Galaxy A7 to its line of metal frame smartphones. The phone is 6.3 millimeters thick with a dual 1.8 gig and 1.3 gig quad-core processors, or 1.5 gig and 1 gig in the dual SIM version, and a 64-bit Qualcomm Snapdragon chip, 2,600 milliamps battery, and 1280 by 720 screen resolution. Instead of full HD, that's the trade-off. The A7 also ships with Android 4.4 KitKat, so no lollipop on this phone in the immediate future, and the phone is expected to be priced at what The Verge describes as mid-range levels. Get excited for mid-range levels.
Metal frame, smart, phone. The New York Times reports that according to a declassified report, the FBI has been more involved with the United States warrantless surveillance system than many people would have suspected over the last few years. Over the past 7 years, the FBI has gone from reviewing email accounts of non-Americans from the NSA's prison system to retaining copies of unprocessed data for their own analysis to nominating new email accounts of phone numbers for collection. The information comes from a Justice Department review of activities under the FISA Amendments Acts of 2008. The Times requested the report be declassified through the Freedom of Information Act, and parts of the report remain heavily redacted.
Shocker. The next web reports that U.S. President Barack Obama called for a new law today that would require U.S. companies to report any data breaches to their consumers within 30 days of discovering the attack. The Personal Data Notification and Protection Act would also make it a crime to sell a person's information overseas. The Federal Trade Commission would be empowered to issue penalties to companies that fail to comply.
And this was happening right as CENTCOM was having their account compromised. So I think it subverted the message. 30-day notification, though. I'm all for that. There's plenty of times when something happens and I ask a bank and they're like, we can't tell you, or we don't know, when I know they know. I would like to know. 30 days seems proper to be able to get your house in order to notify people of that sort of thing.
To me, this is a failure by, and let's just even say the Fortune 500 companies to get their ducks in a row on this earlier. You know, for as much crap as we as movie fans like to give organizations like the MPAA was heroic at the time in keeping standards and practices from being enforced by the government. And I feel like this is a failure by major companies, especially the ones that have tremendous dealings in the personal lives of so many Americans, from not releasing this information sooner. And the idea being, hey, listen, we all get hacked. No one's going to run screaming from you if we reveal it. Let's just be transparent and safe about this so we can all do better going forward.
Bloomberg Businessweek reports IBM was granted the most patents in the United States for the 22nd straight year.
Get out the streamers.
IBM received 7,534 patents in 2014. Samsung had the second most in the U.S., and Canon had the third. IBM spends, here's the kicker, IBM spends about 6% of its annual revenue on research and development. That's the arm that delivers the most patents. Companies like Google and Oracle, they spend around 13%.
That is a crazy number. And you can only, I mean, like, remember that scene at the end of the first Hobbit when they zoom into the cave and Smaug's eye opens and it kind of looks like the Sauron eye, and it's just like this one little heartbeat of looming darkness. I read this and I just see a future patent war on the horizon. Like, all I see is just yet another flare up like we had a few years ago, where it's just nothing but lawsuits, and this is the refractory period for that.
This is just the fodder for that. Well, you don't have to wait long for two of those companies we just mentioned.
Did someone say Google and Oracle? The U.S. Supreme Court has requested the view of the President of the United States regarding an appeals court conclusion that Oracle's Java API are protected by copyright. The Supreme Court is considering taking up the case. The U.S. Department of Justice will likely respond to the request. Google's Vint Cerf argues that allowing copyright on code means to enable programs to talk to one another and set a dangerous precedent. Oracle felt the lower court decision was a victory for software innovation.
Yeah, this is not as simple as like Oracle wrote some code and they should get a copyright on it. It's the method by which an API allows you to communicate with it that Oracle's trying to copyright here. And the initial court said, no, that's just communication. That's 3% of the code that Google wrote, and it's just meant to communicate. You can't do that. And then the appeals court said, nope, Oracle wrote it. We're going to take a very strict view that if they wrote it, they get to copyright it, and we're not going to pay attention to the realities of the situation. So now the Supreme Court, interestingly, is going to the Department of Justice, essentially, by appealing to the president and saying, okay, we'd like your advisory opinion. We want to know which way the wind is blowing on your side of this issue, which means they're thinking of taking it up, essentially.
Yeah.
GigaOM reports that the interior ministers of 12 European Union countries met on Sunday and issued a joint statement condemning the attacks on French satirical magazine Charlie Hebdo. The ministers also reaffirmed their, quote, unfailing attachment to the freedom of expression, human rights, democracy, and tolerance. Then they called on ISPs to, quote, create the conditions of a swift reporting of material that aims to incite hatred and terror, and the condition of its removal where appropriate / possible, which could very easily be seen as the opposite of freedom of expression, human rights, democracy, and tolerance, to just start removing stuff you don't like. The group also resolved, however, to develop positive, targeted, and easily accessible messages able to counter propaganda, which I think is a better use of their time.
listen, they want to let everybody know that they are on the good guys' side. They also don't know who the good guys are, and we're all scared and terrified. We're just hoping to cover all of our bases so nobody blames us and we lose our phony baloney jobs.
I can't define infringing speech, but I'll know it when I see it.
And I will ask the ISP to remove it.
Yeah, exactly.
For the second time in less than a month, Google's Project Zero disclosed a Microsoft bug before Microsoft got a chance to fix it. You know what that means, folks. Slap fight! Google notifies software manufacturers of a bug and then waits 90 days for it to be fixed before disclosure. Microsoft, The Verge quotes Microsoft's Chris Benz, the senior director of Microsoft's Security Response Center, as summing up the age-old debate over responsible disclosure. Quote, those in favor of full public disclosure believe that this method pushes software vendors to fix vulnerabilities more quickly and makes software's or customers develop and take actions to protect themselves. We disagree. We believe that those who fully disclose a vulnerability before a fix is broadly available are doing a disservice to millions of people and the systems they depend on. Time to go palms up.
I mean, really, it's classic, right? You got one company that you've got a security researcher, but in this side, it's a Google security researcher saying, I found a bug. I need to tell people, or they won't know the bug exists, and only the bad guys will know the bug exists. And you've got the manufacturer saying, don't you dare tell the people, because if you tell people, then other people will know the bug exists and exploit it, give us a chance to fix it, and on and on and on and on. And I'm curious what Google's up to here by hewing so closely to their 90-day calendar, because in this case, Microsoft said this was coming in a fix on the next Patch Tuesday. Everybody knows about Patch Tuesday. Why don't you just extend your 90-day period for a few more days till we get to Patch Tuesday?
Well, because Google has pretty much from their inception made a habit of antagonizing Microsoft at almost every turn. It is so ingrained into the culture of that company that you could say, if even for that reason, that's why they want to give as little leeway as possible to Microsoft in this particular case. But it certainly just reeks of them not wanting to give any kind of break to Reddit.
Well, careful, Kettle, because that pot may call you totally absorbent of light. Google's under a little scrutiny themselves. According to Todd Beardsley, an engineer at security firm Rapid7, there are 11 vulnerabilities in the open source component called Android WebView, which is a key component of the old Android browser before they replaced it with Chrome, and the one used by apps to display web pages. Here's why he's up in arms. Google has stopped patching the component for phones running older versions of Android than KitKat. Now, that might not be a problem. You know, people don't support old operating systems forever, except that about 46% of Android users run Jelly Bean, the version right before KitKat, meaning those users won't get the patch from Google. Now, Google says, look, we refer any patches for those systems of WebView to OEMs, many of whom control the updates anyway. So they're saying, if you're on a Jelly Bean phone, the phone manufacturer needs to take care of this. Google does support other patches for older versions of Android, so it's not the entire operating system that they've cut loose on. And they also issue patches for their own software through Google Play Services. That's the layer on top of the open source version of Android that makes it Google's version of Android.
But it's still Google leaving a vulnerability on a phone or on many, many phones that have this older operating system, which is really, I mean, the larger element of this is the age-old problem with Android. Google not being able to control, in many cases, how many of their phones are moving up to the most common operating system, to the most advanced operating system, to the most economic and safe operating system, because it's essentially a free operating system, or a free operating system that they have out there for the OEMs to deal with. So
I think what Google's saying is, look, if you're using WebView in your app, push the patch through your app. Yeah. If there is a phone out there that's not administered by Google that's still using the old Android browser as the default, then you need to talk to the manufacturer to push the patch. But we're not going to keep pushing the patches for things that aren't us. If it's us, if it's a Nexus version, It'll have a new operating system, and we'll push the patches out through that. And I think I get what they're saying. I also get what Mr. Todd Beardsley's saying, which is like, really, you couldn't just push this one little patch? There's 46% of your users out there on this operating system. But
well, and this is the double-edged sword. We had the conversation the last time I was on about Google winning CES, quote unquote, because everybody talks about Android. Everybody talks about Android. You can't have that brand awareness that is all-encompassing with literally every phone that has an Android name on it, and then not inherent these problems as well. Like, that is part of the wide adoption.
Yeah. If I were Google, I'd try to distract people with drones.
Yes. GigaOM reports that the U.S. FAA has approved CNN to test the use of drones in news coverage. CNN has been working with the Georgia Institute of Technology on drone use for aerial footage. Now, CNN will test multiple professional-grade drones for the FAA. The administration will consider setting a range of rules for different kinds of drones. Tom, whither the chopper man who is going over all of the traffic of the day, are his days numbered?
He's being replaced. He's out of a job. I don't know what he's going to do, but he needs to stop. He's just going to be sitting back at home looking at the drone footage and doing this thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, man, it'd be so great if we just went 10 years where they kept lying about choppers being in the air and it was just some sound effects on a board.
Oh, man, I would love to live in that world, even if it was a lie. I don't care. And Gadget reports that Cuba's ETEXA, or ETECSA Telecom, I'm not sure, ETEXA, is launching its own public Wi-Fi in Santiago de Cuba this month. That's the second largest city in the country. The price will be $4.50 an hour. If that sounds reasonable to you, keep in mind the average monthly wage as of 2013 in Cuba was $20 a month. But it's legal to use these access points, unlike sneaking access to Wi-Fi from hotels and offices without approval. So it's a step.
Well, listen, if you want to get Wi-Fi to your 1954 Chevy 300 or 3100, then this is the time to do it.
Yeah, when you're parked near the ETEXA telecom hotspot in the second largest city. All right, time for some news from you. If you haven't heard, we've got a subreddit, and if you're ever sitting there thinking, why didn't they cover this, you can have an effect on that, because all of our headlines, including these, come or at least are influenced by the subreddit at dailytechnewsshow.reddit.com. So at the very least, take a moment every morning, just look it over. It's a great news source on its own, and then just vote on a few things. You're like, yeah, I'd like to hear about that. I'd like to hear about that. I'd like to hear about that. Star Fury Zeta submitted the TechCrunch report on the company Palantir, formed in 2004. There's been a lot of mystery around this company. They're thought to use data mining techniques to assist law enforcement agencies and security companies. Well, now TechCrunch has some data on them. They received a private document from 2013 that's being circulated to investors. It describes Palantir's data analysis targets as government, finance sector, and legal research. Securities Investment Protection Corporation has used Palantir software in the past to sort through mountains of data, over 40 years of records, according to TechCrunch, to convict Ponzi schemer Bernie Madoff. Clients like the LAPD can search data sets for connections using natural language. They don't have to have SQL queries. It's also been used to combat fraud. It's been used by the CIA, the Department of Homeland Security, NSA, FBI, CDC, Marine Corps, Air Force, Special Ops Command, West Point, Joint IED Defeat Organization, Recovery, Accountability, and Transparency Board, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children have used the system. Even the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists use Palantir to gain insight into the global trade and illegal trafficking of human tissue. So now you know a little more about the Palantir, but you should cover it back up in that blanket and give it back to Gandalf, because it's going to mess you up.
I can report that all of Palantir's home bases are named after Lord of the Rings villages.
Is that true?
I know for a fact, and I'll explain to you after the show how I know it. But
no kidding.
Yeah, they are super nerdy.
That's amazing.
Captain Kipper submitted the Verge report that Google is about to release an updated version of its Google Translate app for Android, which will automatically recognize speech in several popular languages and change it to text. Previous statements from Google have hinted that upcoming versions of Google Translate will be able to deliver delay-free, near-perfect translations. Last month, Skype unveiled its real-time translation program. Time to get to those two programs to translate each other in one hilarious video. Cue Yakety Sax.
Oh, yeah. This is coming now.
Google Translate says support DTNS.
See? He's on my side. And that is a look at the headlines. All right, let's get into our main discussion story. Future of Life Institute put out a letter on Sunday pledging to safely coordinate and communicate in the field of artificial intelligence to keep it under human control. In the letter, they say, because of the great potential of artificial intelligence, it is important to research how to reap its benefits while avoiding potential pitfalls. And they link to a document that outlines a lot of the pitfalls. Immediate concerns include machine ethics, self-driving car liability, autonomous weapons, privacy, professional ethics of the researchers. They ask questions like, what is good behavior? You're like, great, make the IA, program the AI so it only has good behavior. Well, what is good behavior? They talk about verification of that behavior and of the data, validity of the data that an AI is using, security of the AI, and of course the one that everyone immediately jumps to, control, making sure it's aligned with human values. Signees of the document include Stephen Hawking, the co-founders of DeepMind, the British AI company that Google bought, MIT professors, we've got IBM's Watson supercomputer team, Microsoft research people, Nick Bostrom, Dale Galiniak of Downers Grove Public Library, who's very important to the folks in Downers Grove, mind you. Here's a quote that they use in the linked document from the Presidential Panel on Long-Term AI Futures. I'm going to throw this out, Justin. I want you to get your reaction to it. Mm-hmm. They say this is kind of the thing that we need to focus on. There was overall skepticism, according to this quote, about the prospect of an intelligence explosion. This is on that panel. Nevertheless, there was a shared sense that additional research would be valuable on methods for understanding and verifying the range of behaviors of complex computational systems to minimize unexpected outcomes. Technical work would likely lead to enhanced understanding of the likelihood of such phenomena. So they're saying, we don't think there's going to be an intelligence explosion. We don't expect Skynet. But just in case, we should be really careful. And it's being compared sometimes to nuclear weapons in its seriousness. A lot of people felt when the Manhattan Project was begun that it was irresponsible because you didn't really know what was going to happen. Do you feel this is the same thing?
Well, it worries me that really, really, really smart people are worried about it, right? Or at least want us to talk about it and want us to quantify it. I think it is a very good idea to continue to do that, you know, to make sure that we have guidelines in place on what we know and how what the best practices in the development of these systems as we continue to get more powerful versions of them. However, it kind of just feels, and maybe it's because of where we are in history, to just be evocative of a lot of different things that it probably isn't, but yet we metaphorically just kind of place into these holes. Like you said, now all of a sudden you read this and it seems evocative of the Manhattan Project. When you read some of this and you talk about like making sure that this form of life is subjugated and docile, you can't bring it close to human understanding without thinking of other times where we have talked about human beings being subjugated and docile and better for us and not for themselves. Although what themselves would be is something that is unquantifiable right now. So it's fascinating, but really terrifying when really smart people are kind of worried about this. And in the midst of Elon Musk having a huge moment for his SpaceX company, the next tweet he writes about is another pet issue for him, which is the danger of the coming AI. You can't help but have a little chill down your spine about it.
Yeah. In May of last year, you probably remember, Stephen Hawking usually gets credited with writing an article in The Independent, but it was Hawking, Max Tegmark, who's one of the co-founders of Future of Life Institute, Stuart Russell and Frank Wilczek. And in that article they wrote, whereas the short-term impact of AI depends on who controls it, the long-term impact depends on whether it can be controlled at all. Now, there's a fundamental tension going on here that I think is really interesting. On the one hand, it's easy. In fact, it's too easy to get reporters out there, and especially, you know, people in general purpose news who are working on deadlines, to create a fantastic headline that says scientists trying to make sure AI doesn't kill us all. That doesn't seem
You the B-roll of Terminator 2.
right. It doesn't seem to be what this is about. The Future of Life Institute, as I mentioned, says there was overall skepticism about the prospect of an intelligence explosion. At the same time, you have smart people, like you mentioned, Elon Musk, Stephen Hawking, saying, we should worry about this. So why are they risking it being overhyped? Because it's not an immediate concern. I think it's because, if you think about it, all these guys, especially somebody like Elon Musk, especially somebody like Stephen Hawking, are long-term thinkers. And they understand, they're like, look, we don't know if there's going to be an explosion of intelligence. If there is, we don't know when it would come, but we know that it could come. And even if there's a very small possibility, we should be thinking about it now. Because after an explosion of intelligence happens in artificial intelligence, it would be too late. And it's easy to scoff now and say, oh, come on, it's a small possibility. But small is not zero, as all of these mathematicians know. Yeah. And so it's a tricky conversation to navigate. I think this is a really interesting way to do it.
Well, and also, what would an explosion of intelligence mean? And this is where often I try to separate what is our narrative versus what is a possible reality. Because the idea of AI just going from this dormant, nascent thing to all of a sudden, the genie's out of the bottle, the unstoppable, propulsive, exponential force is something that has been a part of our culture for a very long time. And many times I think it's hard for us naturally as humans to kind of separate whether or not that's the most likely outcome. Now, these people are saying it's not, that there's great skepticism about it, but like part of me thinks like, yeah, but wouldn't it be more likely that we just start relying more and more on these kind of things and it is a slow sort of build?
That could be too. I think what they're saying is, look, we're doing all kinds of machine learning out there. We're doing all kinds of artificial intelligence out there. We had a story today about Google Translate, right? Yeah. Usually that kind of thing. I know the Skype one for sure is done on machine learning, where you start feeding it things and it starts learning on its own. And I think the danger here is that, sure, most of these times we would love to have the problem where the thing starts learning faster than we expected. That would be a great problem to have. But what every scientist, every researcher has had that experience where the unexpected result does end up being a little bit better than they expected. And what happens when suddenly you accidentally hit on an algorithm, when you've got this many people working on it, that starts to outstrip your ability to control it? How do you create the necessary lab conditions of containment for that possibility? That kind of seems to be, and maybe I've got it all wrong. I'm definitely not a scientist, but that is my gut reaction to what this conversation is about.
Hey, listen, all I know is this. Whenever these dudes talk, I'm listening.
Yeah, absolutely true. All right. Take care of a couple things before we get out of here today. Our pick of the day is going to come from me. We do have more picks coming in from you guys, so keep sending them in. But I started using Downpour this weekend. It's an audiobook store. It's DRM free. You buy an audiobook from Downpour, you can put it wherever you want. There are no restrictions on what you can do with that file. They have apps for Android. They have apps for iOS. You can download them, obviously, and listen to them on your laptop, no matter what your operating system is. And I've been listening to, Justin, you know how Brian's been going on. I think you've listened to this, too. How Star Wars Conquered the Universe.
Oh, yeah.
I'm trying to get Chris Taylor is the author. So I've been listening to that on Downpour, and it's been great. My only complaint is there is no 2x button on the iOS app, which I don't normally do for audiobooks, but I kind of like to have that option. That's a real minor complaint for me, though. Everything else is there, 30-second skip forward and backwards. You can do some customizations, cloud syncing of where you last were listening. So if I pick it up on my Android tablet. Anyway, and it's $12.99 a month for 1 credit. They're not a sponsor. I'm not getting any money from telling you about them. I just think it's really cool. And I love Audible, but it's great to have some competition in the marketplace.
I feel like you should just have like that radio tag at the end of your picks where instead of it being like super fast talk to let people know something bad that you were trying to sneak by them, just so you can remind, because every time you come on, you talk about something that you like, and then you have to remind everybody this is not a sponsor. I'm just talking about something I like. You should just talk about what you like, and then at the end, just have like, Tom is not receiving money for this. He just likes it. Don't think that he's taking money. Bye-bye.
Diamond Club hopes you enjoyed this program. Maybe I know somebody who can do that for me. Downpour.com, DOWNPOUR.com. Send your picks to us, too. Feedback at dailytechnewsshow.com. And you can find my picks at dailytechnewsshow.com/picks. A couple of messages of the day. Vince Power from New Brunswick wanted to share 2 cents regarding the concern that YouTube might be in trouble because Facebook is having explosive video growth. We haven't necessarily expressed that, but a lot of people out there are. YouTube is turning into an aggregator of sorts. My daughter and friends will spend hours on one type of video and never leave the site. Today was Minecraft. Yesterday, how to do zombie makeup. Facebook, on the other hand, is where the general family and friends video seems to be. My mother and my aunts are all getting smartphones because feature phones basically don't exist anymore for them and are starting to take videos and pictures of the grandkids and using little iOS features called Send to Facebook. So Vince thinks there's still a divide between how these are used. And I think that's pretty interesting.
Well, but there's a huge market to be made by just those smaller content, and if YouTube does not have that, then they are a fundamentally different company than they were before when they did.
Simon wrote in and said, I enjoyed your CES coverage last week. Thank you, Simon. I'm glad. We put in a lot of hard work on that. I was interested to hear the official Best of Show was Sling TV. This really highlighted to me how troubled the TV market must be in the U.S. In the UK, services like the BBC's iPlayer have allowed live streaming as well as catch-up TV and even downloads for off watching online for years. Even the big commercial TV vendors like Sky TV have great apps and flexible plans that have allowed me to buy access for just a weekend or by the week without any cable subscription. All this is just taken for granted as being available and is found in as many smart devices as Netflix. I wonder what the Mount Rushmore carved Republican President Trust Buster Theodore Roosevelt would make of the internet, cable, and TV market in the U.S. if he were here today. He'd think it was magic because he'd be like, what? It does what? Sends pictures?
He would shatter the glass of whiskey in his own hand with his massive, strong fingers.
Yes, he would. Then he would throttle your internet with his bare hands. I've heard that a lot from people. Like, hey, you know what? When you got a national supported broadcast institute like the BBC, suddenly a lot of other things fall in line. It's kind of too late for us to do that. Sadly.
Well, I mean, but the issue here is innovation, and you can say why innovation is happening in the UK. The fact remains that's a much smaller market than many of the cable conglomerates particularly have. But it certainly is, and it is a stinging indictment of where we are in terms of entertainment here in the United States, and also the fact that we create a lot of it, that there is a lot of original content that is pumped out here that people want to make sure that they make as much money as possible, and especially if it's in their backyard. But Sling TV, killers, kings of CES, huh?
Yeah. Well, and honestly, we could go on all day about why the U.S. got in the situation it did with cable television.
You could really do a whole show with it.
Cord Killers that does that, exactly. But Sling TV, remember, it didn't win Best of Show just because it's a cord-cutting solution. It won Best of Show, according to Engadget anyway, if you believe them. It won it because it actually created TV for the Internet. So you don't have channel numbers. They're not trying to replicate that way of doing things. They said it works really well. It works the way apps work. It works the way you want it something to work that you're using over the internet. It takes advantage of the flexibility. And in that case, I'm sure it's maybe not as impressive to somebody who's got the iPlayer. iPlayer has its own quirks, though. It's not a perfect interface. And sometimes it's a little bit of a victim to the fact that it is a legacy of a broadcast institute. Sling TV isn't perfect either, but I think the reason it won Best of CES wasn't so much like, hey, cord cutting. It was that it does it well. And there are going to be lots of competitors from Verizon, from Sony, and possibly others entering the marketplace this year. So Who knows? By the end of this year, there could be in the weird, bizarro world where people are like, wow, the United States has the best internet television systems because we have so many competitors.
I mean, theoretically, we should, right? Like, it's where a lot of these companies are headquartered. There's a lot of money. There's a lot of technological innovation. We have all the pieces. And if we can put them together, baby, you got a stew going.
That's right. Yeah, you got a home court advantage that you should be taking advantage of. We'll talk about this on Cord Killers today, but I thought the Golden Globes was interesting because of all the references to watching TV over the internet that weren't involving nominees like Orange is the New Black or House of Cards or even Transparent. Like, it was just kind of worked into the fabric more this year. It's becoming a new normal. I think that's really interesting.
Certainly. I mean, for Transparent, you know, the place where I primarily buy millet to feed my parrots to win the best comedy award. That's amazing.
All right, that is it for this episode. Thank you, Justin Robert Young, DTNS contributor and co-host of Night Attack, Weird Things, The Jury Show. You do one of those days on the morning stream that isn't Wednesday, so I don't pay attention much.
Yeah, it's because it is too busy overshadowing Wednesday.
That's why. I'm not sure that's why. But you can follow him on Twitter, twitter.com/Justin R. Young. And anything in particular you want to give folks the word about before we let you go?
I want to thank everybody who listened to the show and supported the Patreon for my One Mic show, Jury, which happens on Sundays. New episode out right now. If you would like to listen to it, you can listen to about all of my anxiety about not wanting to charge Tom for my services here on Daily Tech News Show, which I talked about.
After I sent him a guilty email. I'm sorry about that.
So go ahead and if you haven't checked out the podcast, then go ahead and check it out on the downloader of your choice. It is JURY. Or if you are a fan of it and you'd like to pitch a few cents, few shekels to me on Patreon, that is patreon.com/jury.
And don't forget, patrons, you can support us right here on the show as well. We're trying to get Veronica Belmont and Scott Johnson to join us and to defray their expenses. We need more of you to support us. So if you can answer yes to the following questions: I get value out of the show, I can afford to give like $1 a month back, and you aren't already doing that, go to patreon.com/acedetect and do so. In fact, last week I said if everyone who hasn't been donating gave 20 cents a month, we would hit the goal, and some guy gave me 42 cents. So he doubled it. Thank you. dailytechnewsshow.com/support has the links to all of that. Don't forget, you can have a voice in what stories we cover at our website. dailytechnewsshow.reddit.com is the place to vote. dailytechnewsshow.com is our website. Email address is feedback@dailytechnewsshow.com. Phone number 51259daily, and alphageekradio.com carries the show live. We'll be back tomorrow with Simon Dingle as our guest. Talk to you then.
This podcast is part of the Frogpants Studios Network. For more information about this and other shows, visit frogpants.com. Audio program so good, it's like you're there.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.
God, that stinger makes me giggle so much.
Good show, man. Good show.
Absolutely.
Coming off the CES tide going out.
Yeah, this was a weird news day.
There was news. There was definitely news, but it was not the normal mix.
Well, not a lot of. I mean, like, the problem with that AI story is, like, I almost wish, like, I did a fair amount of reading on it, and, like, I feel like if I would have done 3 times the reading on it, it would have been a better discussion.
Well, shoot, man, if you had an artificial intelligence that you could feed that reading to, and then it could summarize it for you, you would have been fine.
Hey, by the way, I'm gonna go ahead and on Twitter, there's gonna be the obscure reference award. Whenever I drop an obscure reference and somebody can pick it up, the hint for this episode is Arrested Development. So go ahead and hit me up on Twitter if somebody can pull the obscure reference that I dropped.
Which obscure reference?
It's a little sub game. Tom. This is why you brought me on, so people can
No,
play
I love this.
in the game.
Yeah, it's the extended universe of Daily Tech News Show. It's an ARG.
And people
Speaking
keep
of
comparing me to people that I
extended
know I'm not
universe,
aware of.
did you see that CBS is going to be doing Supergirl? Like not
CBS?
CW, not CW as you might expect, but CBS Network has picked up a Supergirl pilot.
That's today they announced that.
Yeah.
And that's
I think the
confirmed on a
TCAs are-
leak.
No, that's CBS
Probably
boss explains why Supergirl good fit for CBS.
Because I had seen a rumor about that a few weeks back, and I was like,
Yeah.
but not about
No,
CBS.
this
Just
is-
it was the rumor was saying CW was going to do it, so that's even more
Rumor
interesting.
is saying CBS, and they addressed head on the whole
Wait,
like
rumor is saying it or CBS? Is?
no Nita Tassler. At
Yeah,
the
well, you just
Television
said rumor is saying, and I thought that was not what you meant.
No, I
No,
think
no.
this is all probably from the Television Critics Association.
Yes,
Which
which is what I'm trying to explain to you, which is that the joke I'm trying to get to is that CBS Network is going to try to do a superhero series, which I find vaguely hilarious because they put as their proof that they could do it The Good Wife and Madam Secretary. Yeah.
Well, I mean, but ABC just sold us Agent Carter,
which
based
was
on
awesome, by the
based
way.
on Olivia Pope and Sydney Bristow. You know,
Yeah,
But those are more
It's all about the
consistently
production
thematic.
team, not the network, really,
Yeah.
isn't it?
No. I mean, have you seen Person of Interest?
well,
I've
but
heard
also
it's really good these days.
They
I haven't seen
want
it in 2 years,
they-
3.
Big Bang Theory is only going to go for so long. They have an aging population. Big Bang Theory crosses over into a younger demo for them. For CBS, it's preteens, right? But in reality, it's probably older than anybody might want to admit. They need younger properties, although they have always mined, kind of the slowly receding television demo. They need younger properties. This is a good shot at it. If you're going to go for a DC property that will go to TV, Supergirl's not a bad one to do.
Oh, I think it'd be great for the CW. I don't know. We were so burned by Person of Interest. So burned.
Oh yeah, I quit on it. Really,
yeah,
I was
because-
excited about it, and then I quit on it
The
fast.
potential.
But
and
apparently, it's gotten really good. I've read
Alright.
good reviews from respectable sources. I can't verify that. I have.
Yeah.
I'm like you. I'm sort of like, I don't know if I want to go back and be burned.
Well,
again.
that and also it's like, do we know who the showrunners are, or they just
Yeah,
announced?
it's Ali Adler of Chuck and Greg Berlanti of Flash and Arrow. So that's a good. The show will have procedural elements, Tassler later said, but will also build in a series arc for the character that will drive the series. So,
Who did the girl who's on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. now? Used to be on Friday Night Lights. She did a pilot, Supergirl. What network was that? Do either?
No.
Wonder Woman,
Texas
not Supergirl.
Forever.
It's Adrian Palicki who did
That was
Wonder
Wonder
Woman with
Tyra.
I think it was David Kelly.
Tyra.
And have you seen that leaked pilot?
The costume killed it.
Wait,
That's
the
all I ever
pilot,
saw.
It was hot garbage. Holy smokes,
Really?
did it stink on ice.
Oh man. Well, Agent Carter, man, they killed it. They just killed it. It was so
I still have
good.
to catch up on that.
Oh, so good. I haven't properly taken to the Twitters to express my deep and abiding love for that show, but
I'm trying. I don't know if Brian. I left him a note
Yeah.
about it. I was like, because I know his daughter has been really enjoying all the Marvel Universe stuff.
Oh,
I was like,
man.
if you haven't had her watch Agent Carter, I know he hasn't had him watch Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. because he was a little leery of getting into the whole, backstory mess and then trying to figure out where to jump in properly and all that. But Agents of Carter, you can start watching right from the beginning.
Oh man, they just
nailed
nailed it. I'm so proud of we are related through one of my old jobs. I wouldn't go as far as to say friends with, but someone I used to work with is married to the showrunner, one of the showrunners of that show, and it's like just surging pride for having nailed it. It's just so awesome.
Yeah, it really was good.
So anyway, sorry, I got us off track, but I was just like so blown away by like that piece of news about Supergirl.
CW is apparently going to spin more shows out of Arrow.
Yeah.
Kind of been pointing that way with Adam, but Vixen apparently too. Maybe that's why they don't want to do Supergirl.
There's another show we kind of gave up on a little early, and now maybe feel sad that we gave up on.
What, Arrow?
Which
Yeah.
by the way, it's not crazy for Supergirl, if not explicitly in that universe, to have some kind of crossover and bleed because.
But they said no.
What was that?
The very last part of that article basically said, no, we're going to keep Supergirl to ourselves for a while over here at CBS. And I was like, oh.
Well, it's not impossible.
That's crazy because the CW guys are talking about like we'd cross over with Gotham, which isn't even the same company.
I know. So this points to my original point of like, okay, see how that goes.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's the thing. Is like, the C in CW does still stand for CBS.
Yeah, CW is owned by CBS Corp.
Mm-hmm. No, it's legally possible. It's just that their first statement was like, "Oh, we won't do crossovers, not for a while."
The first rule of crossovers is you do not necessarily
talk about crossovers.
All right, guys. I am out of here.
All right, man.
Nice
Good
to
show. Good work. Good stuff.
All right, gang. Peace out.
Have a good day.
Do you want a title? Because I thought artificial uneasiness was my favorite.
Oh, you guys were talking, so I just
Yeah.
took it. But that's the one I used.
Yeah. So I figured it was sort of the artificially self-evident title.
I did like Old MacDonald Had a Robot AIAIO
A
in
little
a sort
long.
of conceptual way. It made me laugh. Too long
Oh,
for you?
I think I lost. No, all right, I didn't lose it. Briefly lost the ability to type. Yeah, it's a little long. It's a little long.
We need to get more people voting.
Do.
Do all of you in the chat room watching live vote? Showbot.tv? Because if you don't, you should. There's great title ideas. Even if you just go read them.
New Patreon level, DTNS News Drone. Oh, as long as I don't have to operate it.
Well, it'd have to be autonomous then.
Yeah.
You know, we'd have to put some AI in it.
If you like it, then you should have put AI in it.
If you're lazy, then you should put
You
AI.
should have put AI in it. That would be the oh.
Oh no.
Oh no, I created Skynet. Oh, it's a whole song.
It ends midway with an explosion.
Yeah, that's like how the Trouble Goat Call song only goes 10 seconds because who would need more?
Right.
CENTCOM tweet down.
I saw that one when it was submitted in the chat room. I thought it was clever.
Yeah.
83%, 84%, 86%.
I
Just
feel like
keep-
artificial uneasiness is pretty good.
Although Old MacDonald Had a Robot has now tied it as people have continued to vote. I still think it's very elegant, Dark Redeemer. Well done. No disrespect to CS 803. And I think we've got a podcast link. All right. That does it. As soon as I publish this and preview it. Alpha Geek Radio folks will hear me preview it. There's a lot of money.
A lot of mummies?
A lot of mummies. It's Egypt. All right.
I keep waiting for someone to try to do a show where they modernize the mummy, and it keeps not happening.
Modern day mummy.
Mm-hmm. This fall on CBS.
On the FYI network. Okay, folkses. We're out of here if I can find the window. Okay. Bye.